everybody, it's Nate, Ranch Foods Direct. Today we're going to be making a blackened double cut pork chop with some red eye gravy and a red beans and rice side dish to go along with it. We're going to start with the red beans and rice because the red beans themselves are going to take a couple hours to cook. Instead of using canned beans, I'm using the dry bean that we sell at our market here. So I did a pre-soak on them, set it up, rinsed the beans, sorted them, made sure they were clean, put them in a pot with a couple inches of water, and then turned on the heat, brought it to a boil, and just let it sit for about an hour. And that's what we're left over with here. We started with a couple cups of beans. We've got about 5 cups now. We're gonna probably not use all of these beans, but we're gonna have them here just in case we want to throw them in. So getting started, I've got my pot starting to warm up for me here so that it's ready to go. And we're actually going to get started cutting up some of our vegetables that we're going to throw in. So we've got the Cajun Holy Trinity, which is the answer to the Mirepoix, onion, celery, bell pepper. We're going to cut those up now. All right, there we go. We got our Holy Trinity all ready to go. Last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna smash up some garlic so it makes it easier to chop it up nice and fine. Just use a bench scraper, throw it on the side, smash it down. You may have a couple of jumping garlic cloves, but that's all right. One more thing that we gotta do, we gotta cut these andouille sausages into nice little rounds. Now we're ready, we got everything done. And our pot's nice and warm. We're gonna add in a couple tablespoons of a sunflower oil we sell in the market. You want a nice high smoke point oil so you don't smoke out your house. Then we're going to add in our Holy Trinity. Turn the heat down a little bit. I'm actually going to add a little salt and pepper at this point. We'll make sure that we're building flavor and seasoning all the way through. I'm actually going to add a little bit of the Cajun seasoning now as well. Alright, we're going to sweat these at a lower temperature until the onions start becoming translucent. Our Trinity is softened, the onions are just a little bit translucent, not too much. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. We're going to add in 4 cloves of garlic that we rough chopped earlier. And a couple tablespoons of, so the recipe calls for bacon fat, but I didn't have any bacon fat available. I do have pork lard that we sell in the market. So if you don't have bacon fat in your fridge, I mean, I've got some at home, but I don't have it here. This is a decent substitute. Now we're going to sprinkle our flour. We've got about 4 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And what we're doing is we're creating kind of a quick roux to thicken our beans later on. So we're going to stir that together, make sure there's no clumps of flour in there. cook this just a little bit. We don't want to darken the flour, but we definitely want to cook the floury taste out of it. So it's going to take just a couple of minutes to cook that out. Okay, so the flour is cooked down a little bit. You can see it's kind of sticking to the bottom of the pan. That's perfectly normal and quite fine. We're going to scrape up those bits a little bit beforehand, but also when we add the chicken stock, add just a little bit, you can kind of come in and scrape those bits up. Now we're gonna add the beans. Just add about half of what I got here, so a couple of cups of beans. And if you don't want to use dry beans, canned beans are perfectly fine. The recipe actually calls for canned beans. Yeah, see, I want a lot more beans in there, so I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of my beans. I'm gonna add some of the andouille. Add about half of it. Yeah, that's about right for the andouille. So I'll save the rest of those andouille for another recipe. And then a couple of bay leaves. And then I've got about a tablespoon and a half of that Cajun seasoning left over. I think I'm gonna add all of it. Our beans came to a boil, turned it down just to a simmer a little bit. I'm gonna add some of the hot sauce. We sell this red ass Brandon's hot sauce in the markets. Really good flavors for this. So we're just gonna shake in probably a couple tablespoons worth. Let that soak in. We'll taste it again as we continue cooking, see if we need to add a little more to it. I'm not adding any more salt and pepper right now. I'll save that towards the last half hour or so of cooking and see if we need it or not, because the andouille's got some salt in it and it may not be necessary. All right, there we go. Put the lid on, let it hang out for about an hour or so. I'll check on it and see where we're at. Our red beans has been cooking for about an hour and a half. Starting to look real good, smells delicious in here. There's still got a little bit left to go, but while that's finishing, we're gonna get started on our blackened pork chops. I've already got the rice started. I'm using a long grain, organic brown rice that we sell in our markets. Just using a little rice cooker. Cook your rice however you normally cook it. Even using Uncle Ben's microwave rice is fine in a situation like this. Do whatever is gonna work for you. All right, so for the recipe for this, we're gonna make up a mixture of the Cajun seasoning and some brown sugar. We're gonna put that on the pork chops. We'll set those aside. We'll come back, prep the rest of our ingredients, and then we'll get started cooking everything. So we've got about a quarter cup of the Cajun seasoning. There's just enough of the seasoning in one of these packets that we're selling in our markets to do a quarter cup for the pork chops and then a couple of tablespoons for the red beans. A couple tablespoons of brown sugar. We're gonna kind of break all this up, mix it all together. I want to get rid of all the little clumps of brown sugar in there. Get it all spread out. Got some fantastic calicrate pork chops, pork loin chops, bone in, so it's very similar to a T-bone. We've got a bone right there and a bone going across, so very similar. You got the pork tenderloin on one side and the pork loin on the other side. Just like on a beef, this would be New York strip and this would be tenderloin. All right, we're gonna season these liberally. So the recipe calls for half of a red onion that we're gonna slice, but we were selling these beautiful little tiny baby red onions at the Fillmore market, so I decided to grab a couple of those. What you're looking for is about half a cup of sliced onions. So we cut them in half, so we got nice little half moon shapes, and we're gonna do fairly thin slices. All right, we got 4 cloves of garlic. We're gonna do just the same as we did for the red beans and rice. Put it on the board, use a bench scraper, squish it a few times. We're gonna chop this even less than we did the stuff for the red beans and rice. We want nice, fairly decent sized pieces. That's about all I'm gonna do right there. And we got some bacon. This is a pork applewood smoked bacon that we sell in the markets. It's at both Fillmore and Town Center. I'm gonna line everything up because I'm gonna do one cut down the middle, lengthwise, and then I'll cut them all against the grain. We're gonna start cooking our pork chops now. They've sat for about half an hour with the seasoning on them, so they're looking really good. We got a combination of butter and sunflower oil right here. Going in. The second side didn't take very long to brown up at all. Got some nice blackening on there. I'm using a little bit of parchment paper on the sheet pan that I'm using here. That way they don't stick to the sheet pan. It'll come right off of this paper real easy. All right, I'm gonna leave the oil or the fat from the pork chops in the pan. Gonna turn the heat down though so it doesn't burn on us. And we're gonna put these in the oven. Be careful, the pan's hot. And then we're gonna go in with the bacon. All right, we're right at the edge. The bacon is just about to turn nice and crispy, so I'm gonna start evacuating it. Want to make sure and leave the fat in the pan though. So use some tongs or a slotted spoon, something to pull the bacon out without taking the fat. Now we're going in with those red onions that we sliced. I'm gonna cook these for just a minute before I add the garlic, because garlic is prone to burning and I don't want to torch it. Going in with the garlic now. So we're going in with the bourbon. Be aware that potential exists for a fireball, especially if you're using a gas stove. Just trying to cook the alcohol off without taking all of the liquid. We want the flavor in there. About there, then we're gonna add in the flour. Got about 2 tablespoons of flour. I'm gonna sprinkle it in. I'm trying to make a little bit of a roux here. I'll make sure all the flour gets cooked without burning. All right, then we're gonna add about half a cup of chicken stock. At this point, it's probably a good idea to change to a whisk. Make sure you don't have any clumps. We're also gonna add about a cup of coffee. I stopped by Hold Fast Coffee this morning and got a cup of wonderful coffee from them. We sell their coffee in both of our markets. You can swing by and grab it from us, or you can go to the cafe and get a fresh cup from them. Now we're gonna add about 1.5 tablespoons of brown sugar. Then we're gonna add about 1 tablespoon of heavy cream. And the bacon's going back in. Along with some pearl onions. I was able to find fresh pearl onions. If you're not able to find them, frozen is fine. Just make sure you give yourself plenty of time to defrost them. Do do a little taste for seasoning to make sure that we're all right. Oh, flavor is fantastic. Really taste that coffee coming through. I think we want a little bit more salt though. All done. I'll loosely tint these with some foil, let them kind of rest for a little bit while we build our bowl with all the rice and red beans. So I'll bring it over to this. Alright, so our brown rice is all done. I've added it into a pretty big bowl here. It's family style. You can do individual portions if you'd rather. Plenty of that jus. Got some green onions that I sliced on a pretty severe bias. There we go. Red beans and rice, blackened pork chops with red eye gravy. Hope you enjoy.